How many of you have a vote by mail still at home? That has not been mailed in, making sure. So you gotta know who to focus on today over here. This is what I gotta do. Let me ask you real quick. Those of you that are undecided, that raised your hands for that undecided, if you don't mind, if you want to share, what is the holdup still that you're kind of processing through in your head a little bit about what you want to hear or what you want to think about over the next 10 days that you haven't made a decision yet? I ask all the time. People sometimes, they share it. Who? Come on. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I like all the Democratic candidates.
You like all 6 of us. Equal. That's a new one.
Yes, I'm very fair.
Okay, it's fair. It's fair. It's fair. Go ahead, yeah?
I'm going to be very blunt here, and I hope
Yeah.
nobody gets offended, but I want to make sure whatever candidate that we end up, in the primary can stand up and beat the Republican bullshit.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
I'm seconding the exact same thing. All I care about, even though I care about all the issues, is that we have to have a candidate that will defeat the Republicans.
Okay, so we'll get into that, obviously. Very important. Who else? Anybody else say something? But while I still am here, we'll get to some of these. I'm just curious. It's helpful for me. Yeah.
It's less a case of being undecided as trying to find out specifically what each candidate is for.
Okay.
Like I have another kid like Cheryl, and I need to do more research as to who stands for what.
Okay.
That's part of why I'm here.
Have you been to any of the other ones of these?
No, I have not.
First. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, sure.
I'm a retired state employee.
Okay.
I lived through the administration that robbed our pension.
Yes.
And had to repay my pension
Yeah.
myself. I'm very concerned about, you talk in your ads about, I'm sure this is not the word, the excesses that you're going to use for
Yeah.
other things. I want to make sure that my pension is going to be secure and that it won't be touched again.
Fair. Somebody agrees with you. Let me ask one other question before I kind of get started here. Is how many of you, out of curiosity, have been to another candidate sort of event like this? 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Half. Not that was years ago, but that doesn't count. That doesn't count. Okay. Let me start by telling you what I hope that you get out of today, and what I hope in an hour or so that I'll walk away with, and how I'll know that hopefully this was productive. The hope is that, broadly speaking, that you'll leave saying that this campaign is different than the other 5, and I know how, and I understand what he says with regards to why and how it's different. Broadly speaking, there's a couple key ways that it is different. The first is that it's about political reform, which we're going to talk about with regards to electability in a second. But political reform, as much as I talk about trains and buses and taxes and affordability and housing, all those things, political reform to the process is as important as government reform. You pay a corruption tax in the state of New Jersey, and it drives a lot of the affordability issues in the state of New Jersey. And I'm in a lane for the last 2 years talking about this day in and day out, because I believe that if you're going to confront all of the differences that we have here and the problems we have in New Jersey, you have to be honest about the system of government and that corruption tax which you pay. So I stand alone in that lane. The second thing is that the campaign is more substantive on policy and detail than anybody else, and we're going to get into that. It is very clear these are the things that I will do. You'll ask questions shortly, and I'll answer them. There's nothing scripted. And I'll tell you, this is what I want to move forward on and why I think it is what it is. And some of the things might not be great politically for me to say, but the hope is that you'll leave here and say, okay, he said these 30 things in detail. I understand how he thinks. 27 of them are really, really good. 3 of them I could care less about. But I understand at least how he's going to accomplish that. That would be a win for me and for you. And then the third thing is, in an era where you have a federal government that is attacking New Jersey, the approach that I have to standing up for us is very different than the others. We all talk about it, and I'm sure it's going to come up in the questions, but our approach is different on that. And so those are the 3 broad things that I would point to that are different than anybody else. When most of the other candidates do this, and that's the reason I asked, it also is different. They'll kind of get in front of you. They'll give you kind of that 10-minute kind of canned speech. We're going to fight Elon Musk, and we're going to fight Donald Trump, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And then there's 2 or 3 scripted questions. And you may not know they're scripted, but I promise you they are scripted. And I know that because they're the same questions at every meet and greet. And after that, they kind of go on their way. And you could see that the entire program kind of lasts like 30 minutes, okay? I mean, I post these sometimes to YouTube, and you'll see they go an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, because the goal is that you leave here with kind of your undecided component and your questions answered. I mean, I do have a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old at home, so I will stay here all day, answer questions. We will hope that we get this resolved from your standpoint, whether you feel comfortable. On the political reform front, there are a lot of things that are different on how I've approached this campaign, not just me talking about it from the beginning. And I'll tell you about myself as a starting point in a couple minutes, but a couple of things that I did that are different than anybody else is I have announced who my lieutenant governor is, okay? And that kind of makes sense. So, you know, most other campaigns in the state announce the lieutenant governor. They all will after the primary. It's a political deal that tends to happen based on who wins the primary. But every other state, if you think about it, tells you who the lieutenant governor is before the primary because you should know what an administration looks like. Every other state does it that way. And so for me, I said, you know what, we're gonna create some transparency around this, make you comfortable a little bit with what we're gonna look like as an administration. And so a couple months ago, I said, this is who my partner is. Her name is Sheena Collum. She's the mayor of South Orange. She's a phenomenal, respected mayor. She's the head of the American Planning Association. The reason I chose her, just so you understand, is that I think mayors are really important to the skill set as being an executive to being governor. Probably talk about that in a little bit too. But, you know, I come from Jersey City, 300,000 people. It's a big operation, but not every municipality in New Jersey is like Jersey City. I've learned a lot along the way, and I think I could be very effective, but the reality is that a lot of municipalities are much smaller. South Orange is 20,000 people. It's a totally different type of municipality, so having a complementary partner that speaks to those sort of things was really important to me and to communicate with you guys about. The other thing that is different is that I'm supporting candidates all the way down the ballot. So, you know, I fundamentally believe that primaries are a healthy part of democracy. They create better candidates, they create more accountability, they create better legislation. And we learned that last year with Kamala and Joe Biden. Primaries are healthy. In New Jersey, you haven't had a competitive primary that has lost down ballot assembly and state senate and county commissioners in like 30 years. And the reason you haven't had that is because the county line, which existed up until last year, allowed a county boss, a person that controls the line, to put in place an assembly person or a senator that would basically be beholden to them because the structure of the line didn't allow those people to lose. New Jersey was the only state that did it like this in the country up until this election. And so I said, I'm gonna try and change this with creating accountability. So about a year and a half ago, I said, you know what? We're gonna be already spending all this money on communicating with you in commercials and digital ads. I kind of thought we're gonna send you a lot of mail, not as much as Sean Spiller, but I knew I was gonna send you mail. And so I said to myself, why not include all of these people that could run for office that have had barriers to entry and help them get over the goal line? It cost me nothing. So we kind of sent an email out, we advertised it, 150 people applied from across New Jersey. We set up these committees in each part of the state. I didn't participate in them. And these committees of activists would screen these candidates, and they settled on 40 of them. They settled on 40 around New Jersey that are running together with us on the same slogan, Democrats for Change. And these people they're just phenomenal people, backgrounds of doctors and lawyers and former mayors and people that have just really done good work. Now, the political establishment, as much as they hate when I talk about the corruption tax, they hate that I'm supporting people down ballot because it creates accountability. But it's good for you. It's good for you. I mean, if you don't believe me, just think last year about the Open Public Records Act. It was a proposal in Trenton to roll back what you have access to publicly from records when you file a request with the clerk. They rolled it back so you have less access to that today. It was a bill in Trenton. Thousands of people went down to protest it. Thousands. okay? Maybe a handful of people were supportive of it, and they passed it nevertheless. Why did they pass it? Because your elected officials don't feel that they are accountable to you. They feel they're accountable to this party structure of a line that has allowed them to put themselves in office. And that's really what this primary is about changing when I talk about that corruption tax. Primaries are healthy. We have a bunch of the candidates that are running here. They're going to introduce themselves later on today, but I just wanted, they could raise their hands real quick. Dan, Dave, they're running both for assembly. John and Chris in the back. Dolores running for county commissioners. These people are giving you a choice and pushing the incumbents into a place that is really, really healthy. Damali, I didn't even see you there. Damali's running for state assembly. Did I miss anybody else over here?
Rami.
Andrew Labruno.
35.
Romy, yeah. Okay, so we got quite a few of them here, but it is important that you realize that they are on the ballot as well, and they give you a choice, which is healthy. Even if you like your incumbents, totally fine. I think these guys are better, and women, but if you like your incumbents, it's fine, but you should recognize that they're pushing your incumbents to be more accountable. Okay, we'll leave it at that. So let me start by telling you a little about myself, then we'll open up to questions. Good place to start?
Yeah.
Okay. How many of you have never come to an event with me before? Just curious. Introduction. Okay, good. All right, so let me tell you, if you had told me 20 years ago I'd be in Paramus on a Saturday with 10 days to go running for governor of the state of New Jersey, I would tell you highly unlikely. And you would say, I'm skeptical of that comment. I know a lot of elected officials say that sort of thing. And I would tell you it's true. I wasn't registered to vote, wasn't participating, wasn't involved. And you would probably think, well, that is a bad attribute for somebody who wants to be a governor. And I would tell you that you could make that argument. I would tell you that it's a little more complicated for me. I come from a family of Holocaust survivors. Most of my family was murdered in Auschwitz. 35 of them were taken there, 28 murdered, 7 survived. They immigrated to this country. And those of you that know the immigrant experience would know that most of that time when the immigrants come here, they are not involved civically, they are not involved politically. They are very focused and insular on building a life for their immediate family that immigrated here. And that was the experience that I had growing up. My parents just wanted us to be as American as possible. I had 2 brothers. My older one passed away. He was 2 years older than me. His name was Dan. And my younger brother is Rich, and I'm obviously Steve. My parents just wanted American names. That was the litmus test, okay? And growing up, I grew up in Edison, New Jersey, lifelong New Jersey resident, and graduating college, I got a job at an investment bank, arguably the most prestigious investment bank in the country, and maybe in the world. And you can imagine what my parents thought. They were very, very proud. To them, that's the American dream. My father had a deli growing up, and my mom had an immigration services business. So very, very normal background that I grew up working in those places. I do know more about the deli business than any gubernatorial candidate in the history of America. I mean, I grew up in that place. But the reality is after college, you get this job at this investment bank. It's 1999. I'm on a trajectory to obviously make a lot of money. It's Goldman Sachs at the time. Very hard to get that job as an analyst out of college. On the trading floor. I was there for 2 years, and our trading floor was on 1 New York Plaza, which is 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center. When the planes hit on 9/11, you could literally feel 1 New York Plaza shake. And we evacuated. I'm sure all of you have a 9/11 moment that remember where you were at the time. For me, I was there, and it forced me to really rethink what I was doing with my life. 2 days later, I went to my managers at Goldman Sachs and said I was going to leave and enlist in the Marine Corps. And they thought I was crazy. They thought that that wasn't something that people at Goldman Sachs do, which is true. For me, I viewed it as really just a partial payment for citizenship. I viewed it as I had a lot to be thankful for, that my family came here after the Holocaust as immigrants, and I just viewed it at the time as a debt owed. And I left Goldman. And I went down to Parris Island because I thought it was important to be on the enlisted side. I spent a bunch of months in boot camp down there in South Carolina, Parris Island, and then I was shipped out to Iraq with the first wave of troops with the Marine Corps. You guys might have seen, if you remember, that whole shock and awe, those first couple days of the war. I was there, and we crossed from Kuwait into Iraq that second day, and then I was gradually, in that first wave, up to Baghdad. I was there for 6 months, and when I came back, the mayor of Jersey City at the time where I was living was this guy by the name of Glenn Cunningham. And he was the first African-American mayor in the history of Jersey City, and a very popular guy and a good guy. Most importantly to me, he was a Marine. And so he thought that it was very important for service and military personnel that was deployed and they come back to try to recognize those people with some sort of proclamation. Somehow he got my number, called me, invited me to City Hall. It was my first time ever being in a municipal building in my life, certainly the first time ever meeting a mayor. And I got there, got this proclamation. We went into his office afterwards, probably spent an hour together, he and I, and he asked a lot of questions. What was it like in Iraq? What did your parents say? Were you scared? What did you see? What was Baghdad like? And I would answer them. I didn't think anything of it because people were naturally curious because I was amongst the first deployed and the first back. So people would ask questions and all the time and I would just answer them. But I did think that the mayor and I got along really well. Like it was a natural, comfortable conversation. I left, thought I would never be back at that City Hall again because why would I? And certainly never see the mayor again because why would I? I was trying to get my career back in finance and I was working, and about 6 months later, I'm leaving work and on my phone, I get a 201 area code. And at that stage in my life, I would answer an unidentified phone call. And so I pick it up and it was the mayor. It was this guy, Glenn Cunningham. And today I have a perspective on how weird of a phone call that was because, being the mayor today of the city, I know I have 3,000 employees that report to me. I have 20 people that do constituent services at the time. It's like a big operation in Jersey City. I mean, it's an $800 million budget I'm responsible for. But at that stage, I was 25, so I didn't know any of this stuff. I thought he was legitimately calling about a complaint that I made a week earlier about a parking issue. And I actually said that to him, and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But what he says to me is, he says, look, I'd like to find some time to meet with you in person. I want to talk to you about a couple of things, if you could find the time. And so we went back and forth, and we set a time for 2 days later for me to go into his office after work. And it was my second time ever being in City Hall, second time meeting the mayor, going to his office, and he starts talking a little bit about the politics in Hudson County at the time. And he says, Steve, this coming June primary, so 20 years ago, he says, this coming June primary, he says, Bob Menendez, you've heard of the guy, right? He was our congressman at the time. So he said, Bob Menendez is going to run a whole slate of candidates. He's going to run himself for Congress, and then underneath, county clerk, county surrogate, and then these committee seats underneath. This is what Cunningham says to me. And it's foreign to me, so I'm just like, okay. And then he says, we're gonna run a whole slate of candidates. We're gonna run somebody for Congress, and somebody for county clerk, and county surrogate, and then these committee seats underneath. And I said, okay, sure. And he says, people that go far in elected office have some similar parts to their story, if you really think about it. I said, okay. And he said, most of the time they start when they're young, in their 20s, and they grow gradually over time, building slowly. I said, okay. And then he says, the second thing is, most of the time they lose before they win. That's kind of a common thread, he says to me. And I said, is that true? And he said, yeah, it is true. He says, you could look at presidents of the United States, highest office. It's a fact. Most of them have lost before they won. I mean, George Bush, Bill Clinton, it's true. Barack Obama, I mean, it happens to be true. We didn't know about Obama at that point, but it's 2005. But I was like, okay, fine. It sounds very interesting, And he says to me, look, I'm going to tell you something, and I just don't want you to have an adverse reaction, okay? He says, I don't want you to say no. I want you to listen and just think about it. I said, okay. He goes, I want you to run for Congress against Bob Menendez. And I said, you got to repeat that for me. And he says it again. And I said, Mayor, look, I'm not registered to vote. I'm not involved. I'm like, it's like I didn't expect this conversation. Let me think about it. And I left, and I stood in front of City Hall, and I called my parents. I made like 8 phone calls. I called some friends from college, and I told them what I just told you, this whole story. And they all had the same reaction. They listened to me, and then they all said the same thing. They said, are you sure that's what the mayor said to you? And I said, yeah. I said, yeah. I said, I'm telling you, I was in that room. And so I know we don't know each other really well yet, but I do try to live my life in a way that you can't plan everything. And sometimes, whether it was enlisting in the Marine Corps, I didn't expect to do that, or these sort of instances, I do feel you grow as a person when you put yourself in these uncomfortable areas and you kind of experience different things. And I viewed that opportunity to run for Congress as a similar situation that I didn't anticipate. A door opened, and I said to myself, this is the type of thing I'll tell my grandkids about in 50 years. And that was the motivating factor. I registered 2 days later, and I called him up that day, and I said I would do it. And so he and I started this campaign from January to June, and every day he and I are together, campaigning. And those of you that follow New Jersey politics would remember that a week before the election, he and I are actually campaigning together, and he has a massive heart attack and he passes away. And it was a big deal. It was on the cover of the New York Times because it's not every day that a sitting mayor in one of the 100 largest cities in the country passes away in office, and it's not every day that an African-American mayor passes away. There were less of them in those large cities at that point in time. So it was on the cover, it was a big deal. And the following week was the election, and needless to say, I never became a congressperson. But so you're probably wondering, why did he tell me all that, okay? So those 6 months when we're campaigning every day was a pivot point for me. It was a life-changing experience that I did not anticipate, very similar to the Marine Corps. So he and I, Cunningham, are out there every day. And all day when we're out there, people are coming up to he and I, and I'm a nobody, but the people don't know that. They assume, and they just want help, and they're coming up with issues, local issues and state issues and federal problems that these people have. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? I got a problem with that. Some very small and some very large. And I have a front row seat to this every single day for 6 months. And in the times that he was able to resolve the issue that this person was concerned about, or connect them with a person that was able to resolve it, I could visibly see how that person's demeanor changed when they got that solution. They came to him with this issue that was a heavy weight on their shoulders, and somehow he was able to kind of alleviate some of that pressure, and you could visibly see how that person felt differently and acted differently. And I thought it was the most amazing thing. I was like, wow, this is such a great thing. I want to do this with my life. If I ever have a chance to do something like this with my life, it's more important to me than any sort of financial service job. It was a pivot point for me. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. I didn't anticipate any of that. The following year, I ran for city council in Jersey City. And running outside of the political establishment is a tough thing in Hudson County, a tough thing in Jersey City. It is a very rare situation that somebody wins a seat like that. And we squeaked out this council seat in downtown Jersey City. And it was a big enough deal, to put in perspective on how rare that is, that the New York Times wrote a big article about it. And I share that with you because if you think about it, when was the last time that you saw the New York Times write an article about any council person winning a seat in any city in the country? It was a rare anomaly. And I worked hard as a council person. In 2013, I said I was going to run for mayor of Jersey City, very much like this race that I'm running right now, very grassroots focused and very substantive on policy. And when I tell you that the entire political establishment was against me in 2013, I'm not doing justice to that statement. I mean, of course, you had all of the Jersey City Democratic Organization, you had all of Hudson County, you had every notary, the person of notary, whatever that word is, that's what I'm trying to say, in the state, engaged. Cory Booker felt the need to cut a commercial. Mayor Bloomberg across the river felt the need to cut a commercial. It was one of two races in the country that then sitting President Barack Obama directly engaged in. He actually put a commercial out. He engaged on behalf of Rahm Emanuel, running for mayor of Chicago, and Jeremiah Healy running for mayor of Jersey City against me. I share that with you because I know a thing or two about the race that I'm in right now. I know a thing or two about people not thinking that I'm going to be successful, and I certainly know how these grassroots campaigns look. I won that race, and I'm the first three-term elected mayor in Jersey City in 70 years. And I share that with you because it is a complicated city. It is the single most diverse city in the country, every year recognized as much. And it's arguably the first or second on population. And we have wealth, we have poverty, we have different communities. I mean, you name a challenge, we have it in Jersey City. Now, over the last 12 years, Jersey City has been one of the best Renaissance stories in the country. And you could visibly see it, but if you think about it, We've been the state leader in every housing policy, affordable housing, environmental justice, economic policy. I mean, you name it, we have been at the forefront. And when people say, of course Jersey City would have changed, it's 3 miles away from New York City, I always say the same thing. I say Jersey City has been 3 miles away from New York City for 250 years, okay? And the reason that it's changed is because it was able to articulate a clear vision during the campaign and just drive at that every single day to change it. Most of the things that Phil Murphy would tell you today, if he was here in this room and you asked him, what are your biggest accomplishments as governor? Most of the things that he would point to, the first place that it happened in the state when it was difficult and hard to accomplish happened to actually be Jersey City. We were the laboratory change, the first for the minimum wage, Jersey City. The paid sick leave, we were the 6th in the country. It was brutal to do it when we did it. Vision Zero, we were the first. They just copied us this year. Short-term rentals, I mean, we had a $6 million battle with Airbnb that became a national narrative around that. I tell you this because, yes, when he points to things, the first place when it was uncomfortable to do it was Jersey City. Now, 2 years ago, I started this campaign for governor. And at the time, the political establishment said, you're pushing people, it's too early, they're not gonna like that, they're not gonna be your friends. And I said, look, I'm starting this campaign early for 2 reasons. It was very clear. I said, the first reason is that I wanted to do something that was substantive on policy, and you cannot do that in 6 months. Not just platitudes on websites where you say, here's the 3 bullets about trains or 5 bullets about taxes. I wanted to dig into things and see if people would respond to that. And so what I would do is I would start once per month with one part of our policy paper: trains, transportation, next, housing, next, public safety. And we'd roll one out one at a time. They're 20 pages, 25 pages, 18 pages, all the same way. This is what I did in Jersey City on this issue, what I accomplished. This is what I learned while I was doing it. And this is what I know I can do for the state of New Jersey if you give me the opportunity. And then we would do these Zoom calls. And I wouldn't know who wants to talk about trains 2 years ago. I didn't know. 400, 500, 600 people on those calls. And I knew then that people respond if you are clear with what you're trying to do. If you treat people like adults, that even if they don't agree with you, instead of saying these poll-tested kind of sound bites, if you say things in a sincere, honest way that they don't even agree with you, but you could rationalize it, they will respond to that. And so we started to grow. And the second reason I started this campaign early was because I wanted to build something that was grassroots focused, something that wasn't beholden to those political machines. Because if you want to change it, if you want to change the culture in New Jersey, it's not credible if your starting point is being beholden to them. That's the truth. And so today, our campaign is bigger than anybody else, by far. I mean, we're 1,500 plus volunteers, every day engaged. We don't have a campaign manager. We don't have a field director. We don't have a finance director. None of this stuff. We don't even have a campaign office anywhere in the state of New Jersey. It doesn't exist. And I tell you that today, the majority of those 1,500 volunteers are out there pounding doors and on phone banks and working because the campaign is different, because it is mission driven with regards to changing New Jersey. I mean, NJ Monitor did a thing 2 weeks ago about salaries and payrolls of these campaigns. Raz Baraka, $500,000. Mikey Sherrill, $300,000. Josh Gottheimer, $250,000. Us, they actually had it wrong. They said $3,000. It's slightly more. I think it's $8,000. But my point stays the same, okay? Is that we are not structured the same way. It is entirely focused on changing New Jersey. I've done 120 plus of these sort of conversations. I have 4 of them today. Give you perspective on what I'm doing today. And they're the most important things that I do because I learn a lot and hopefully you get your questions answered. And what we're gonna do now is just you raise your hand and there's nothing off limits. I mean, if you wanna talk about politics, electability, if you wanna talk about November, if you wanna talk about trains, buses, nothing is off limits. The goal is that you push, hey, I heard this and I didn't like that, or I'm concerned about this and I wanna talk about it, and we'll go from there. And that's the way this is going to work. So I just want to say with that, thank you for coming out today. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll just open up to questions from there. All right? Thank you. Yeah.
I'm only 2 or 3 weeks into school. There's a lot to sift through. One thing that turned me off, and I'll give you an opportunity to speak about
Yes.
that, initially was your stand against adopting the definition for anti-Semitism.
Yes.
And that turned me off, but I had to sit through it and heard your explanation, but I thought I'd give you the opportunity to address that now. But I started phone banking on Thursday, and I hope to do a lot of it between now and
Yeah.
June 10th. Someone raised the issue that I shared also. They asked me about funding for state parks.
State what? State parks?
State parks.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, I don't know that, but I know in Jersey City, he's
Yep.
created a lot of green space.
True.
He's into sustainability. You didn't mention it just now, but
Yep.
Jersey City, I believe, was the first one to ban plastic bags.
Yep, true.
So you didn't mention that, but I didn't have a specific answer, so I thought
Okay.
those two things you might be able to address.
How many of you are familiar with the IHRA bill that he's referencing? 1, 2, 3, of course. The rest of you, who has no idea what that is? It's very interesting to me. Okay, so I'm going to try my best to kind of talk through this a little bit and kind of bring you up to speed. I'm going to say one thing as a kind of side note, just a little history on this. I get elected in 2013 outside of the political establishment. I shared that with you. And they immediately started to talk about me running for governor in 2017, okay, immediately. And it's heady stuff. And I started to buy into it, okay? And in 2014, 15, 16, I started to say to myself, in 14, I convinced myself that the only way to be relevant statewide and run a statewide race is if you start to build these relationships with these county chairs, these county bosses that I've never been a part of. But I thought the ends justify the means, and I need to spend some time doing this. It's an important thing. And so I spent a lot of time in 14, 15, and 16, dinners and lunches and all this stuff with these county bosses. And I would come home to my wife and I would tell her, I don't feel great about it, but it's good for the greater good at the end of the day, because I'm going to be able to do some things for the state that I wouldn't be able to do unless I had these relationships. But I would say, I don't like these people. I would tell her that I don't think they're inherently, not all of them, but a lot of them are not good people. They've monetized this for personal gain. In 2016, I'm perceived as the front runner. Me in North Jersey, most of those county chairs are with me, and Steve Sweeney's the South Jersey guy. So it's basically Steve Sweeney and I, North Jersey, South Jersey, and Phil Murphy is a nobody. He's like a distant third in this situation. Nobody's even talking about it. Leo, true, right? Yeah. 100%, okay. And I go home to my wife one day, it must have been in August or September, and I said, I'm not gonna run. I don't feel great about this. The election is 9 months away. I said, I don't feel good about the campaign that I built, and I'm not gonna run. She was surprised. She's like, you put a lot of time into this, and a lot of money and time and resources. And I said, I know, but it's not right, okay? And so I called Phil Murphy on a Thursday. I didn't know the guy. I called his office, and we set up a dinner for Saturday night, or drinks, or whatever, in Newark. It was me, him, and chief of staff, and my chief of staff at the time. And I said to him, I'm not going to run, and I'll endorse you on Monday. And he was shocked, okay? And I didn't know Phil. I just thought he was better than Steve Sweeney, because Steve Sweeney was kind of this political boss from South Jersey, and Phil Murphy was a blank canvas. So I was like, you know what? We're going to help Phil Murphy. Hopefully he'll do the right thing, and we'll do this press conference. I didn't tell anybody. I said, Phil, just don't tell anybody. We'll just do it on Monday, and we'll go from there. And at 10 a.m., we scheduled this press conference, and it was a big deal. In New Jersey politics, it was a huge deal, because the ground shifted, because all these people thought I was the front runner, and all of a sudden, I'm endorsing this guy, Phil Murphy, and the establishment then panicked. And then 2 days later, the rest of the political establishment that was with me, that didn't want Steve Sweeney from North Jersey, 2 days later, endorsed Phil Murphy, and then Steve Sweeney dropped out. That's how you got Phil Murphy, by the way, okay? Now, true, right? 100%. And I stood at that press conference, okay, and it was a bitter pill. It was not a proud moment for me. It was embarrassing. A lot of my political enemies ended up being at that press conference, laughing and smiling. I could see them as I was talking. It was humiliating. And after that, for a period of time, people thought I was politically dead and I was a pariah. And I paid a price for it, and I paid a price because of my own doing, because I wasn't sincere with what I thought I should have been doing. I created that mess because I ingratiated myself to people that I didn't feel comfortable about, and ultimately I paid a big price for it. And I said to myself at the time, I said, look, I don't know if I'll ever get the chance to run for governor again. Don't know. It's 8 years away. I have to run 2 times in Jersey City. It's a very complicated city. Nobody's been elected in 70 years. I didn't know if I got the chance again, but I said to myself that if I ever get the chance again to do this, I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to do it the same way I ran in 2013, grassroots, and I'm going to tell people in different rooms exactly what I think, and hopefully that they respond to that. And I really have been true to that this entire campaign. Whether I'm talking about the transgender community, the immigrant community, the Jewish community, the Muslim community, I say the same thing regardless. And people appreciate that. Now the IHRA thing, that's why I'm going to tell you about this. I get a lot of pushback from both the Jewish community on some of this and the Muslim community on some of this. And I say to them all the time, I say, listen, I'm honest and sincere about where I am on this. And if you don't believe me on it, and you don't trust me on it, because I'm telling you something that's not politically expedient, and I'll explain to you what it is shortly, I said, you should ask the Muslim community in Jersey City what they think about me. Just ask them. For 12 years, they have been my biggest supporters, and they remain my biggest supporters. And I have been very good to those people as well, because they understand that I'm honest, straightforward, and clear with them. Even when they don't agree with me, it's a relationship that we have because it's not built on some sort of transaction. And you ask the Jewish community, they will tell you the same exact thing, okay? And that is a difference versus any of the other candidates. Now, the IHRA bill is a definition that has been used around the country and it is being pushed. It's called the International Holocaust Definition of Anti-Semitism. And it defines what anti-Semitism is. And it basically is a proclamation, not a proclamation, a resolution or an ordinance in some municipalities or a state law in certain places that say what and how you can prosecute anti-Semitism. And the sad part about it is that it's become this litmus test between the Jewish and the Muslim community on where you stand on things. If you don't support that unequivocally, in the Jewish community, there are some parts of the Jewish community that say it's a disqualifier. And if you don't support that, if you don't say I'm adamantly opposed to every part of it and will block everything about it, some parts of the Muslim community will say you can't stand with us. And what I say is the following. It's not a good bill. That's the truth. And why is it not a good bill? It's not a good bill because, first of all, you cannot legislate anti-Semitism. You can't define it. The mayor of South Orange passed this bill in 2018. Ask her whether it changed a single thing about anti-Semitism. Nothing, because somebody who is an anti-Semite or is about hate crime is not going to say, well, I'm not going to stop being an anti-Semite because you passed that law. It's not the way it works, ultimately. Now, the law, if you take a step back, and I say this as somebody who grew up in an Orthodox yeshiva, even though I'm not Orthodox, and then went to Solomon Schechter. I have 3 Jewish kids, so of course I'm sensitive to the fact, my family's Holocaust survivors, sensitive to the fact of anti-Semitism. So when a Jewish person says, I don't think you're going to be a good protector of them because of this IHRA definition, I say, look, there's one municipality in the state that has a sukkah during the holiday outside. There's one municipality that has actually, when you had an anti-Semitic attack and we had a massive shooting in Jersey City that stood up when the governor and the attorney general didn't want to call it anti-Semitic, I said, this is wrong and we should declare it as it is. And I pushed the governor. My track record on it, if you are fair, is second to nobody. But the bill is a bad bill because the tropes and the negativity around the Jewish community tends to be, and I say this as a Jewish person, is that the Jewish people sometimes think they have different standards or different sets of rules. And when you have a definition around hate crime that is only anti-Semitism, it opens up the conversation for exactly that. What about the Asian hate crimes? What about the African American community? What about this and what about that? And I tell you, if you listen or you read carefully all of the neutral press that writes about this issue, what do they say? It has a negative tone to it. All of the neutral press. The Jewish press obviously has a positive tone, and the Muslim press, if you read those, has a very negative, but even the neutral, perceived neutral, general press has a negative tone to it. So I say to the Jewish community, I say, you put this bill in front of Trenton. Phil Murphy, if he wanted to pass it, could pass it today. And he doesn't do it because he knows what I'm saying is true. He just doesn't level with people around it. The truth is that if you put this bill up in Trenton, you would have 5 blocks of anti-Semites testifying against this. They would aggregate, saying exactly what I said to you. And the press would say the same thing around that. And the press isn't wrong about that. If you think about the bill says a couple of things. It also governs what you can and you can't do with regards to criticizing Israel. Now, whether you like Israel or you don't like Israel is not the part of this conversation here. The reality is you should be able to criticize any country you want. okay? United States included, Ukraine, Israel. That is part of this country's freedom of speech. And when you get into a place of saying what you can and can't say, it is a dangerous conversation to have. And so, yeah, I answered this when I said that, yeah, I get it. The easy thing for me to say was to pander to the Jewish community, okay? Or pander to the Muslim community on this side. And I say it's more complicated than that, as it should be. And I say when I've taken a little bit of heat on both sides. But both those communities, I say to them, you should ask the people in Jersey City whether they think I'm fair and protect them and stand up for them when they feel threatened. And both of them will say unequivocally yes. And both of them would say that we support him for governor. I'm gonna tell you, he's actually from the Muslim community in Jersey City, coincidentally. And is it not true what I'm saying? True. See, true, okay, there you go. So I didn't even see you there originally, I didn't even think about it. I appreciate it, thank you. Okay, next question. Oh, on the environment, on the parks. Look, open space and sustainability is a priority for me. I had the first moratorium on the warehouses. We're going to lean into that. Most of our sustainability platform is revolving around things that I could do when you have a president that doesn't believe in climate change. So we've tried to outline that. Most of it is around open space preservation, which is exactly what you're saying, more green acres grants to municipalities, and flood mitigation, because those are things I can control as a governor, okay? Yes?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think most of us will agree that the economy is very important.
Yes.
I want to thank you for your diversity, equity, and inclusion work in Jersey City.
Yes. You got a good team. Thanks.
My question is, as our next governor, how will you transfer that so that it is more inclusive within the state of New Jersey?
Yeah.
And how will you assure us that there will be funding for PEI?
Yeah, I think there's two things on that, and we've started to improve it in Jersey City, and we still have a ways to go. When you look at procurement, largely for minority businesses, there is a huge gap between even New York and New Jersey. It is it's embarrassing, okay? And so you do need to have set-asides. I do think that is important. You do need to have some flexibility around bidding, so particularly for different types of minority contractors to get them into the system. And I think you need to have an office in Trenton that helps smaller contractors actually navigate the system, because most of those minority-owned businesses don't have the same resources that the larger ones do, that have the ability to navigate the grants and the RFPs and the RFQs. And those are things that I think you could do immediately to elevate minority-owned businesses and increase, I mean, whatever you call it, DEI. I mean, the goal of it is to increase participation from communities that have been left out. And I think I have a track record on that, and our values are going to stay the same regardless when we get the trend, hopefully. Okay? Yes?
Hi, Steve. I have two questions.
Shoot.
I hope that's okay.
Yeah, of
one
course.
One of them is a real softball, but first thing is, just timeline-wise, you bring up 9/11, and I'm wondering, you're probably in the council in Jersey City. How transformative was it to your tenure as mayor after 9/11, when all of those huge businesses came to Jersey City? And that must have been like a windfall. And was that directly related to why Jersey City had such a tremendous rebound?
Her question is about why Jersey City had a rebound, and was it related to post 9/11 when businesses moved across the river? No. The reason that Jersey City has changed is largely because of two reasons, I would say. When I got elected, we did away with tax abatements. It was a big part of it. So when you talk about these kind of, people talk about relationships with developers, I always say to them, we didn't do a tax abatement for 8 years. Nothing, nada, zero. And I said when I campaigned, I was going to phase all of that stuff out because of the way that the developers looked at the tax abatements were by right as opposed to an incentive, and it affected kind of land sales between private entities, but it didn't act as an incentive to build. So I said, we're going to phase this out because you got to recalibrate the market. People said it would be very disruptive. One of the things that I did do as part of that was change our entire development process to make certain things by right easier to do and expedited based on census tracts. And the reason I did that was to eliminate the politics of it, or try my best to eliminate the politics of that. That certainty in the development process allowed more people to invest and feel comfortable. And that's ultimately, if I want to be fair about it, why you've seen the residential housing growth that we've seen, okay? Once the residential housing growth started to kind of get to the place where it is today, companies want to be closer in proximity to that. So that's reason number one. Number two is that I've leaned in very, very hard to arts and culture. We have the First Arts Trust Fund, the Centre Pompidou, which is the largest collection of modern art in all of Europe, is moving their North America headquarters to Jersey City. We're renovating a 4,000-seat theater, the Lowe's. Like, there's a lot of things that we've done around. I mean, I went out, the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra just is moving their headquarters from NJPAC. We built a whole symphony hall there that'll be open, I believe, next year. It's under construction right now. The reason that people want to live there, and it complements this, is because I've recognized that culture, arts, entertainment, nightlife is a big reason that people want to live in an urban area. Otherwise, you'd live in maybe a suburban area, like Tenafly, if you could, right? And what's changed, so that I've leaned into those. That's probably the reasons, if I were to say, that the growth has happened in Jersey City. And the third thing I would say is because New York City isn't building as much as they should, and so it's put pressure, but it's also on rents and housing costs, which is problematic. But we are, in some ways, a victim of our success because of the type of community that we've built. People want to be there because of those things.
My second.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I was born and raised in Bergen County, did a stint for a decade or so in the city, like so many people, and came back here and raised my children.
Yes.
And been in Bergen County for a long, long time. And I say this because it's been great. It's been great, and I've sit on council for almost 12 years. In my town up here, so I understand a lot of that. So you talk about being the change candidate and all the change that has to happen in New Jersey. I think New Jersey's great, and I know that it has a lot of imperfections and a lot of things that can be done. But when you talk about how you're going to change New Jersey, what are your big pillars?
Yeah.
What are the top 2 or 3 things that you think need serious change?
Yes. Okay. Let me start with why I say that, okay? And I'm going to tell you the specifics in detail, okay? I do feel that executives that are effective anywhere should be able to point to an accomplishment that they are synonymous with, and leadership is about pushing people into an uncomfortable area and getting them to buy into that. That's part of a leadership skill. I mean, if you think about it fairly, I'll tell you, like, think about Rudy Giuliani before he went crazy, okay? I mean, New York City crime was a different animal, right? And he said, look, we're gonna put the transit officers down in the subway, we're gonna flood it, we're gonna eradicate some of the crime down there, we're gonna do the squeegee thing, all of this around law enforcement. And at the time, it was a novel idea, and it had a huge impact. Regardless of what you think of him today, it had a huge impact. I mean, Bloomberg, I'm gonna talk about New York City for a second. Bloomberg, when he said, I'm gonna get rid of smoking in bars. It was a crazy idea. It was like, you remember, you used to have to take a shower or dry clean your clothes after you go out, right? And now you can't, if I were to tell you that we're gonna have a restaurant that is smoking like it was back then, you'd be like, I don't wanna go there. Why would I go there, right? And I say that to you because it's about leadership, okay? De Blasio, universal pre-K. McGreevy here, the Highlands and the Pinelands, insurance reform. Christie, the pension and the toolbox, even if you don't like them, he leaned into those things. My point on Murphy is that if I were to ask you over the last 8 years, what is the thing that you would say in 10 years from now that the Murphy administration is synonymous with that was uncomfortable, that they leaned into and was like real leadership? I would ask. And I've done 120 of these and nobody's given me a good answer, okay? And I share that with you because what would he say? He would say the minimum wage. And I would say by the time you did the minimum wage in New Jersey, we were the 15th state, and $15 is still a poverty wage in New Jersey. He would say cannabis decriminalization. I said, okay. I said, well, the first place that happened was actually Jersey City, as a matter of fact. And by the time we legalized cannabis in New Jersey, you were the 20th state. That's not really leadership. That's kind of following the trend, okay? With regards to, I would hope that the nature of our campaign on June 10th, if we're successful, it's about political reform, number one, because it'll send a message on accountability to more town halls as opposed to the political bosses. Number two, if there's a thing that I want to be synonymous with at the end of the 4 years, is not fixing mass transit, it is building out the South Jersey infrastructure. If you look at a map of, I'll get to you guys in the back right afterwards, so you don't have to keep your hands up.
I have a question about education. So when you done. I would
Sure,
like to ask.
sure, okay. I'll go right to you guys after, no problem, okay? If you look at a map south of Monmouth, it looks very different on New Jersey Transit than it does of north of Monmouth. Building that out is very important to me, and we've outlined the steps on how we're gonna pay for it in detail, which is very different than anybody else. I tell you that because there's one newspaper that has endorsed in this election. Bergen Record will not, New York Times won't, NJ.com won't. The only large newspaper that is actually putting out an endorsement is the Philadelphia Inquirer. All of South Jersey is the largest readership, and they endorsed me, the guy from the furthest north, largely around transportation, because I outlined specifically how we're going to change that. The school funding formula, very, very important for property taxes and very, very important for getting fair funding across the board. Yeah, can you dig into that? The school funding formula hasn't been updated since 2008. It's obviously antiquated. There was an update in 2018. Jersey City lost, as an example, $250 million. It doesn't factor in today things around English as a second language, historical growth. It doesn't factor in some of the infrastructure needs, all problems that need to be modernized. And I think that I have an understanding of that. And the other thing I would tell you is that special education is a big driver on your property taxes. And the special education component should be covered by the state as opposed to your local municipality. Because you're well, all right, so I got, all right, that actually helps in a huge way. But you would end up getting a better product for the families, to be honest with you, and you would also end up getting better property tax situation. But those are changes that being a mayor, you live those things day in and day out, so I could speak to those things and lean into them. School funding formula is a big part of it. I do think that you need to readjust your tax brackets on your wealthiest people. You got to do that in your first 100 days. Things like the turnpike widening, I'm in a different place. And then there's longer term situation about like things that I am passionate about around the environment in particular, and things like ranked choice voting. Very important to me that I would push that because I believe that that is an important part of the conversation. So those are some of the things that I think are important for a healthy New Jersey. In the back, yes?
Yes, so my question is about education. I didn't hear people talking about professionalism, about young kids who are coming to school and instead of going to be lawyers, doctors, and everything, being electricians, being carpenters, being seamstress, everything. I have a small business, and I was looking for somebody to come and help me sew. Oh, we don't learn it. Economics is out of schools. Everybody wants to be a white collar. Nobody's willing. How about taking the young kids from preschool and teaching them to look into the working? So we don't have to source out people to start building in New Jersey, weaving, carpentry, furniture. So if Trump, I'm sorry that I'm bringing him, but he just decided, oh, we will do everything in the United States, but there is no structure to this. If you don't start when the kids are in kindergarten and you teach them to go after, you're talking about leadership. I'm throwing it to you.
Yeah,
because that's so important for the United States.
Yeah, I don't know if you start in kindergarten. I got a kindergarten person, right? You know, I would tell you this. I don't disagree with the premise of what your statement is. I think that we need to look. The next governor, okay, it is going to be, and it has to be, and I'm going to tell you why, a priority. What you said, okay? If you think about why Trump got elected in 2016, okay, and we'll go to the electability conversation in a second, because I know you guys want to talk about it, but there's a lot of reasons why he got elected. But in fairness, if you think about it objectively, okay, you could link back the anger that white men had in the middle part of the country to Bill Clinton signing NAFTA 20 years earlier. When he signed the North American Free Trade Agreement and they started to outsource the jobs to Mexico and Canada at that point, it was the beginning of these people feeling that they have a loss of job, and that anger percolated for a very long time. Trump recognized that and was able to tap into that in a different sort of way, and that amplified him to kind of where he was. That anger that he saw very, very early. I only share that with you per your question because that job displacement of people is why a lot of people were initially angry with the establishment. And what's happening today with artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, the amount of displacement of jobs that you're going to have in the next 5 years is astronomical. It's going to make NAFTA look like nothing, okay? Accountants, lawyers, paralegals, None of those skills are going to be necessary. You're around the corner from that. Doctors, okay? If you put into ChatGPT today, I don't know how often you guys use that, but if you put in your medical prognosis in there, it does a better job of assessing a lot of the things than your doctor does. I guarantee you that, okay? And it's a crazy thing, and I share that with you because you are right about rethinking education, because if we're not, you're going to have a really big problem long term on this. Really, I don't think you're wrong.
GPT cannot fix the furniture.
You're correct. You are correct. You're correct. Not yet, at least, but you are correct. You are correct. So that's why I say you are right. You are right, 100%. And I'm just emphasizing your point on that. Okay. So who had that electability conversation? Who is it?
Oh, mine.
You.
Okay,
Well,
so, we know we're in a really misogynistic, anti-gay, racist
Yes.
time. With all those things, what makes you a more electable candidate besides being a white man?
Well, I'm not gonna say that I'm electable because I'm a white man. I'm not gonna start there. But I'm gonna say the following. I'm gonna frame this because I do think that not all 6 of us can win. Okay, and I say that with sincerity. In November, not all 6 of us can win, and I do believe in my heart that the real number of people that can win is less than 2. Okay, which means it's 1. Okay, all right. So let me tell you. And all joking aside, let me tell you why. Okay, if there's 100 of you here, or 80 people in this room, and I said to you, why did Kamala lose in November? Okay? And I said, write it down and don't share it with anybody. Okay? You're all going to write it down, and it's probably going to be a little bit different for everybody, but there's going to be some common threads in the whole thing. Somebody's going to say sexism. A lot of people are going to say, and it's true. Some people are going to say racism, and it's true. Some people are going to say that she had a short runway to build a campaign. It's true. I'm going to suggest to you another issue. Okay? She was absolutely unable to articulate a clear vision for what the United States of America looks like different than Joe Biden, okay? And if you don't agree, you think about it objectively. When she was in different places, she would say different things. And this goes back to a similar conversation around the IHRA bill, which I'm trying to be clear with people. She would say different things about the environment on fracking in different places, about single-payer healthcare in different places. She ended up losing both the Muslim community and the Jewish community because neither side trusted her, okay? Which says a lot about that. Now, you have candidates as a starting point amongst the 6 of us, okay, that will not touch a conversation around immigrants, the LGBTQ community, transgender issues, not trusted because they're scared because polling says that. And they assume that that'll be okay come November, and they're mistaken. Yes, some of those people may still vote for the Democrat, but if you don't have the energy of the party and those people think that you are willing to sacrifice them, if that's how they feel, okay, then they will not work for you. And this will be a close election in November. So as a starting point, I would suggest to you that the people that cannot lean into tough conversations, that's Cheryl Gottheimer and Sweeney, okay, I think they're absolutely disqualifiers out of the gate when it comes to electability. The second reason I think that electability is different among the 6 of us is because this is not going to be an election about Donald Trump. Okay, it's not. I know everybody in this room likes to say we're going to stop Elon Musk and Donald Trump and the whole conversation and the sound bites on TV. But if you are fair about it, the people that hate Donald Trump are in this room already. They are in our corner. Okay, and a lot of independents in New Jersey voted for him. And you're only going to be successful in this election in November if you can move independents and you can move some moderate Republicans. Now, I'm going to tell you why some of these people are not electable. Like you asked me about myself and Mikey earlier. The reality is that it's going to be a referendum on Phil Murphy is what the conversation's going to be. And the reason it is because New Jersey has not elected a Democrat in more than 70 years, okay? And Jack Ciattarelli is going to say one sentence, and only one sentence, and he's already started. He said that this person is 4 more years of Phil Murphy. That's it. You like your taxes? It's 4 more years of Phil Murphy. You like your energy bill? It's 4 more years of Phil Murphy. You like your healthcare problems? It's 4 more years of Phil Murphy. You like your you're on the environment? It's 4 more years of Phil Murphy. You could say it about anything. And in a Democratic room, you guys might say it's okay. 4 more years of Phil Murphy is not the worst thing. To an independent or a Republican, it is a toxic thing to say in the state of New Jersey. And if you are an institutional candidate, so Mikey Sherrill in North Jersey or Steve Sweeney in South Jersey, it is a non-starter. Okay? If you have the same consultants, the same lobbyists, the same message, the same infrastructure as Phil Murphy has had for the last 8 years, you are never going to get out from underneath that rock as a starting point with regards to when they say 4 more years of Phil Murphy. And if you are defending Phil Murphy as your whole campaign or trying to pivot to Donald Trump, it's not going to work. The only lane that's going to work, and coincidentally, the only lane is the lane that I am in because I am the furthest from an apology for Donald Trump. I mean, for Phil Murphy. The first thing that I say is, yeah, the Democratic Party has issues in the state of New Jersey and nationally. And the reality is that if you are not saying that from the beginning and have credibility in that conversation, which I do have because I've never been accepted by them, your starting point is not something that you can move an independent for. It is impossible, ultimately. So I think that it is only lane that I could be in, and that is credible as far as electability goes. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, I'm a lifelong New Jersey resident, and currently a renter. I lived with my parents for a long time because affordability in this state, especially this county, is
Yes.
outrageous. I know a lot of people that are moving out of this area, even when they retire, because the taxes and just the cost of living in this particular area. We do happen to live in the Northeast,
Yes.
which I know.
Yes.
Currently, I'm a renter. I've been a renter now for the last 12 years. The rents, I know COVID did a lot of things. They brought a lot of people from the city. A lot
Yes.
of rents got pushed up. I'm scared. I like this area. My parents are older. They live in Westwood. I'm in Fairlawn. I work in Englewood for a long-term care facility. All my friends live in this area. I don't want to leave, but again, I'm making okay living, but I'm not making my raises don't go in conjunction with what's going on with the rent. I know people paying $2,700 for a 1-bedroom in Bergen County. That's nothing to shake your head at. And the rents, now that all these in this area, we see luxury apartments coming up. And they use the word luxury, so that gives them the permission to charge $3,000 for a 1-bedroom in this area. What can we do about this? Because, I mean, I don't want to leave this area, and as I said, I'm scared. I'll admit, I'm scared because I want to stay here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The honest answer around your rent prices, okay, is a supply conversation. So New York City is not building enough housing today. That's commonly understood because they have a process that is very difficult to build. They have a lot of these community groups and then the borough presidents and all of these barriers to building. And what it's done is it put pressure on all of North Jersey. COVID exaggerated that and it continues to be a problem. Jersey City has built more housing and affordable housing than anywhere in the state of New Jersey. We've seen the rent problems that you just touched on, largely because of a lack of supply, okay? Want to highlight that one more way. There's conservative estimates are that there are 200,000 units short in New Jersey for current demand, okay? And the current rate of construction that we have, you will alleviate that 200,000 units in 70 years. Okay, just to put in perspective, okay? This is from Fair Share Housing would say that. So that's the reason you have pressure. You do need to build a lot more, okay? And the way you build a lot more is to wrestle the conversation away from the NIMBYs, the not in my backyard people that show up constantly at these council meetings and talk through, I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want this, I don't want that. How do you wrestle it away with them? I would tell you there's a couple things that you can do which are really important. The first is that you need to create more transparency for the public on where your municipality is in the housing process. They have an obligation, most municipalities, but the public doesn't know where they are, so the conversation is co-opted by the loudest voices that force litigation and prolongs this for some period of time. You need to give your mayors and your council people cover, and by creating transparency, you can do that. The second thing is that when your mayor or council person says, this is things that I think I know I can change. When your mayor or council person says that you're forcing me to build additional housing, and you don't give me money for schools or infrastructure or sewers, that is a reasonable thing to say, okay? And today there's no link between the money that comes from Trenton to those that are cooperating, so it creates an incentive for the municipality to push back on that. You need to correct that. And then the third thing is on the Economic Development Authority, where the grants come in. They're largely focused today on big places like Jersey City, Newark, Camden, Hoboken for our high-rise buildings. When the problem in most suburban areas that don't have transit is they push back on this 80-20 rule, where you're saying that I'm obligated to 20 units, you're forcing me to build another 80, right? And it's not even near mass transit, but we can't handle 100 units. The grants should probably help those municipalities more, because you don't need an 80-20 conversation. In certain municipalities, you could drive that down to a 50-50. So you're talking about 40 units instead of 100 units. And you could be more thoughtful around this stuff. But I share this with you because this is a big differentiator also on the electability conversation, okay? I'm going to tell you, you're going to say I'm biased, and I'm going to tell you I am biased. And you're going to say it's self-serving, and I'm going to take it off the table because it is self-serving, okay? So the most important qualification to be the governor is being a mayor, bar none, okay? And you're going to say why? Maybe you're skeptical of that. You have 564 municipalities in the state of New Jersey. You have home rule, where your mayors have a lot of influence and control over what happens in each municipality. And not understanding how local government works is part of the reason that you have an affordability conversation. Even if your governor is well-intentioned, not understanding how to move a mayor is a big lapse overall. Phil Murphy came from being an ambassador to Germany. No understanding of local government. Chris Christie, 8 years before that, came from the U.S. Attorney. No local government. 4 years before that was John Corzine, U.S. Senator. No local experience. But 2 years before that was Dick Cody, state senator. No local experience. And which is a crazy thing, because they do things all the time that incur added costs, where the mayor or the council has to hand you the bill. And then you guys say, why is this place so expensive? 3 years ago, they said Jersey City, Camden, Newark, all of us have to remediate lead pipes. You would probably say, good thing. What child should have to ever drink from a lead pipe? They gave us 2 years to do it. It cost us $10 million. They didn't help us with any money. Things like Megan's Law. Okay, that sounds good. We have 4 police officers all day assigned to Megan's Law because it's a state requirement. They do these things, unfunded mandates, because they don't understand how the local government works. I'll tell you one even crazier, okay? I have seven unions that I'm responsible for, okay? And we negotiate this stuff. I've gone to binding arbitration once in 12 years. We have a disagreement that is very, very substantive right now with one of our unions that might end in a bad place. You can say, what is that? Well, you remember probably 2 years ago, there was a winter where Phil Murphy would declare a state of emergency every single week. It was like a snowstorm, and they would call state of emergency, and then sometimes it was a flurry, and sometimes it was a big snowstorm. But the plows would go down the turnpike, the salting, all of that stuff. And it became a thing. It was like literally every week. Okay. When he does a state of emergency, it triggers in a place like Jersey City, it triggers that our public works employees and a lot of our employees get time and a half or double time, okay? That's contractually. State of emergency triggers it. Period. Okay? Doesn't matter if I do the state of emergency or the governor does the state of emergency or the president does the state of emergency. It triggers time and a half. Okay. Now, we had a disagreement because you're supposed to end a state of emergency. You got to sign a piece of paper. Okay? The same way you sign a piece of paper to put it into a state of emergency, the executive does it. The same way you end a state of emergency. And he didn't sign a piece of paper. So for 8 months, a union filed a grievance saying that they're entitled to a state of emergency pay. Okay? And now you would say that is absurd, right? It's absurd, right? Might have been 6 months. Either way, you would say it's absurd. And I will tell you that we went to court and we lost, okay? And it cost us millions of dollars because the rule and the law is the law is. It's a state of emergency, okay? And that's what it is. And then we had a second union in Jersey City that we're responsible for, saw that we lost this, and they filed a grievance in order to get their state of emergency pay. And we won that on a technicality because they missed the window of time, not because of the merits of what I'm saying. I share this with you because understanding how to move mayors, understanding local government is at the core of the most important skill set for being a governor. You have 2 congresspeople running, okay? And I share with you that learning on the job is not really great, particularly in this moment, let alone the skill set that you need for being an executive is entirely different from what they're coming from. And you've had 20 years of experience on that. Yes?
Notwithstanding how important the local issues are, the policy issues,
Yeah.
you said a couple of other things that sort of point to another really important question. resignation that is driving so many people in this country toward an authoritarian
Yes.
kind of place, with a group of people who are interested in pushing, kind of tribalism.
Yes.
In the country.
True.
Are you seeing anything across, gives you hope, across party lines, that people are coming together to actually explore and explain
Yeah.
to the American people what is the anatomy of fascism?
Yeah, it's a
What
good
is it
point.
really, okay? When you say that so many politicians are monetizing for personal
Yes.
gain,
Yes.
this suggests and points to corruption that has been building over decades
Totally.
in this country.
Totally.
right? And it is in opposition to the universal qualities, the universal principles that
Totally true.
that our country is founded upon. And people are forgetting. They're forgetting. And I feel that people like you, Sheldon Whitehouse,
Yeah.
and others in Congress who are dedicated Americans are concerned and understand history, and they're listening to historians.
Yeah.
I wonder, where's the coalition?
Yeah.
Where's the symposium on television, broadcasting far and wide?
Yeah.
Inviting people from other democratic
Doesn't exist.
countries
You're right.
to join your
You're right.
conversation.
You're right.
To
You're right.
lift the people up.
You're right.
Bring us, inspire us to you.
Yeah.
Inspire us. Yes, call the names, call out the opposition and call them by name and point out what they're doing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, step number 2, what do we aspire to? Where do we take those independent people and bring them to that inspiration?
I think it's a good point. I think you're right. One thing you said is I want to reinforce it, is that if you think about the mood of the country, right, over the last 10 plus years, the Democratic base of the party in 2016 and 2015, regardless of what somebody thinks in this room, the energy and the base of the party was with Bernie outside of the establishment, right? That's where he would put 30,000 people in an arena, right? And then they overrode it with the establishment and put Hillary in there, right? And in 2020, it was again anti-establishment. It was Bernie, and then they overrode with Joe Biden. And it was the anti-establishment with Trump too. I mean, he's a swindler, no question about it. But the establishment wanted Jeb Bush, if you remember, ultimately. And then he overrode that and was able to kind of get into a place on that. So the mood of the country is anger and hopelessness. Going back to electability, there's no appetite for that establishment. I'm just going to tell you, like, I agree with everything you say. Every specific part of that. In the context of here, okay, people are going to vote based on their personal interests. So when you talk about fascism, the people that use that type of language, which is accurate, are in this room. The people in Monmouth County and Ocean County that are independents and Republicans, they're talking about taxes and trains and schools and their personal stuff. And I just want to say one other thing about how do you build that coalition, right? Is that most of the candidates, all 6 of us, get invited to conservative radio shows and chambers of commerce and I'm the only one that goes, okay? And you could look at it on YouTube, you could see, but I say the same thing in those rooms about the immigrant community or the transgender community that I do in a room right here. It doesn't change a bit because I know I could speak to people and talk some common sense into them, maybe not the MAGA extremist, right? But the independent that is level-headed talking about this sort of stuff. My objective today is to set a policy around standing up, obviously, for New Jersey values, keeping the Attorney General, using the surplus to offset, setting the stage to win the House back, okay? But the reality is that people are going to vote in November on specific issues over here, okay? And we got to be conscious of that. I just want to give one other point on this, and then I'm going to wrap it up, okay? Is that there is a disconnect. The stakes are very high in June and November for twofold, okay? I'm going to tell you, I'm on the ballot June 10th, obviously. So are these candidates, okay? But in the case that we are not successful on June 10th, it'll send a very clear message that somebody who has more than $10 million to run a campaign, who has 1,500 volunteers, who has a very organized structure, and they're challenging the status quo, when the political machine wins, it'll send a message that it is impossible to beat that situation. Inversely, if we are successful, it'll send a message to those people that are incumbents around the state of New Jersey that the voters are more aware than you give credit for them for. So I want to tell you that the stakes are particularly high on June 10th. With regards to your comment, that's in the state here on the politics. With regards to her comment here, I want to highlight another reason that the stakes are particularly high. If you are fair about it, in November, and you're fair, I know, take your emotion out for a second, you would acknowledge the fact that yes, it will be a referendum after 8 years of Phil Murphy, whether they want 4 years, because Jack Ciattarelli will use that talking point and where independents are. So if you're fighting the fight in New Jersey, and we're campaigning, you need to be able to talk about taxes and trains and buses in a really, really clear way to move independence. The danger is that if you live in Georgia or South Carolina or California, there's only 2 races in the country, Virginia and New Jersey. And they're going to view it differently of how we're going to view it. If you live here, you're going to say, yes, it's a referendum after 8 years of Phil Murphy. The rest of the country is going to view it as a referendum on Donald Trump. So if you get this wrong, right, if Jack Ciattarelli gets elected, the way that's going to be perceived around the country is that it's affirmation to Trump's policies. There's no other way that you're going to see that because somebody living in Georgia is not going to understand the nuances here. That disconnect is hugely dangerous because 2026, with the midterm elections, if there is an affirmation in Virginia and New Jersey to Donald Trump's policies, you will see that cascade into 2026. And I want to put that in perspective because these things are linked together ultimately. Make sense? One last question, yeah.
I'd like you to talk about the Stay in New Jersey referendum and making it affordable to seniors. I also would love for you to touch upon, because I'm a big fan of your transportation policy.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do that both, and we'll wrap it up. Is that okay? In interest of time. Stay New Jersey. Who does not know what Stay New Jersey is? One person. 2 people. All right. Good. Stay New Jersey is a program that Phil Murphy and the legislature announced 2 years ago that would give a property tax cut to any senior who makes up to $500,000, a property tax cut of 50% of their property taxes. Okay, it's a program that is supposed to start next year. Okay, and what I've said about this is that in the case that the legislature funds it this year, okay, I will keep it, of course. I do not believe that that program will ever exist or that they'll fund it. And you might say why, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to say the history of this program, then I'm going to tell you what we're going to do about it. The history of the program is that the legislature was going to lose seats in the Assembly and the Senate in 2 years ago. They were on course for Republicans to pick up seats. It's a fact, okay? And in August or September, your Trenton Democrats in the Assembly and the Senate got together and they said, we need to do something to win back voters, senior citizens. What are we going to do? They said, okay, why don't we just tell them that we're going to do a 50% tax decrease, and on their property taxes. So they said, we're going to call this program Stay New Jersey. And Phil Murphy at the time did the responsible thing. Phil Murphy said, we cannot afford a 50% property tax cut on every senior in the state of New Jersey who makes up to $500,000. That's what Phil Murphy said in August or September. And then the legislature leadership said, well, if you're not going to be supportive of this plan, then you're opposed to helping seniors. Okay, this is how they framed it politically. And Phil Murphy said, I don't want to be opposed to helping seniors. I don't want you to say that about me. So I'm going to support your program under one condition. And the legislature said, okay, what's the condition? He said, I'll say it's good, but we're going to enact the program only the year after I leave office. Okay? And so that's where we are. Okay? And I just could promise you that if he thought it was viable, he would hand deliver a check to you with a 50% property tax decrease. Now, if they fund it this year, I will keep it, like I said. If they don't fund it, we will change the process around the senior property tax cuts. The way I view that is that it should be like other states, that you cap a percentage of the person's income on property taxes. So for example, 4% of your income for most seniors in other parts of the state go towards property taxes, and it's capped. There's no anchor program, there's no Stay New Jersey, there's none of those, it's just capped. All of these different rebate programs have a problem in the sense that if you think about it objectively, the way they work that I say to Leo, I say, your property taxes is $10,000. So he sends a check to Trenton for $10,000, and then I give him back $3,000 as a rebate, and he's supposed to say thank you to me, right? It's a silly process if you think about it, okay? The reality is it's your money. So the way it should work is just a property tax cap based on your percentage of it. That's how every other state does it in the state of New Jersey. It's a cleaner and easier way to navigate this whole process. But we'll see what they do as far as funding this year. On the transportation plan, just one thing. Let me just go real quick, because I think it's the most important thing that we can do in a congested state like this. There's a couple things that are very clear that you can do as the governor right out of the gate. The first is last year, they put in place a corporate business tax on companies that make more than $10 million in revenue and dedicate it to New Jersey Transit. It was the first time funding source went to New Jersey Transit directly, and the genesis of that idea came from our policy paper. They gave us credit for it a year earlier, just to give you an idea. They only put it in place for 5 years. That's the problem, starting point. A, it doesn't fix the problem because it's only for 5 years, so whoever the governor is needs to fix that. But the second part is you cannot bond. You cannot bond against a 5-year revenue. And the reason you would want to bond against a revenue like that is because that's how you invest in upgrading train stations, bus stations, infrastructure. And if you're going to get riders to feel good about New Jersey Transit, they need to walk into a facility that's clean, that's safe, that's modern, that feels like people care about. So you need to correct that. Number one, it would be right out of the gate. Number two is the largest infrastructure project in the state of New Jersey that you guys pay for, we all pay for, is that turnpike widening going into the Holland Tunnel to alleviate traffic. 14A, B, and C, they are building a new bridge or scheduled to build a new bridge starting in the next year, year and a half. I am unapologetic. I will cancel that project. I will finish the safety improvements on the initial one, and I will allocate the balance of it towards mass transit improvements around the state, building infrastructure. And the reason I feel that that's important, I mean, I live in Jersey City. The activists and the environmentalists agree with me, and it's not going to solve any problems. You could make 20 different lanes wide. The Holland Tunnel is still 2 lanes, so you're coming into the same bottleneck, okay? So we're going to reallocate that. And then the third part is that the bus system today in the state is largely privatized. When you get on a bus, a New Jersey Transit bus, you'll see it's operated by, let's say, Academy buses, as an example, okay? And the reason that's a problem, because government doesn't make money on mass transit anywhere in the world. It's understood. Economic development, mobility, quality of life, you get good things out of it, but you don't make money on it, okay? It's nowhere in the world. When you're bidding it out to a private vendor, they have a different set of responsibilities. They're trying to monetize that, as they should. But that disconnect impacts your ridership, impacts your quality, because they need to squeeze a route in order to make money. And those things are not healthy to increasing ridership. The priority for me at the end of the 4 years, if there's one thing I want to be synonymous with, is not just fixing New Jersey Transit. That is a given. That is a given. It is building infrastructure to expand transit. There are parts of the state that have nothing. And if you're going to get employment opportunities here, jobs here, economic development, more housing, at the core of that is building more trains and buses. You're so congested here, you can't have more cars. That's the reality of the situation. And building more highways just encourages more cars. That's what you need to build more transportation infrastructure and have that reliable in order for people to say, I want to use that because it's quicker than what we have. I'm going to tell you, I have a lot of experience on this. I mean, easy things that I've done around bikes and infrastructure. We have the largest bike share, the largest protected bike lanes. I think that stuff is important. I'm in the ferry business in Jersey City. Unfortunately, we run that contract out. The largest microtransit system in the country. We started in 2020 with VIA as a partnership. We run 2.5 million rides to compete with New Jersey Transit when they abandoned the south side of Jersey City. So I have some experience on this stuff, and it is at the core of what I'm trying to do around transportation. Okay, we're going to wrap this up in the interest of time. I think I'm headed to Cranford.
I'm going to wrap
Can I just say thank you real quick to the... Let me say one thing. And I want to say, before I hand it over to them, to just really quick introduce themselves for you, because they're all on your ballot. So take a minute, if you could bear with us, another 10 minutes entirety. But I do want to just wrap up by saying thank you for coming out today. those of you, it's 10 days left till the election. And the truth of the matter is, those of you that are still undecided or were when you came in here, hopefully I've moved you a little bit. You got to make a decision at some point in the next 10 days. So please, if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out. Those of you that raise your hand, you've already voted. If you voted for me, I just want to say thank you. If you made a mistake and voted for somebody else, I forgive you. There's people that you could actually tell in your network, which is just as important. I want to just highlight that commercials don't really matter. 10 days, people tune it out. It's going to be an ugly 10 days. I could guarantee you that. People slow saying this, that. At the end of the day, the most important thing as far as moving people is you and your relationships. You are the most credible messenger when you say to somebody, I heard him speak, it made a lot of sense. That is the thing that moves people the most. And I hope that you would consider leaving with either a lawn sign, because that starts the conversation for one of us, or calling some of your friends. 10 days left. It is a consequential election, and if you get this wrong, it will impact what politics looks like in the state of New Jersey, what politics look like in the country based on the results in November and electability. So please think about that carefully, and hopefully I'll see you again after June 10th. So thank you. Who wants to start?
So I just want to tell everybody, please give us a few more moments. I know we've had this really inspiring conversation, but I also want to make sure that we get to know the other Democrats for Change who are running. We can do it by county commissioners first. We will also have tables set up for each district in the vestibule. So can you guys please come up here and introduce yourselves? We're not letting anyone leave. By the way, the doors are closing.
Hi, my name is Chris Chung. I'm running for Bergen County Commissioner along with John and Dolores. This year we have a very competitive primary going on for Bergen County Commissioner. We haven't had that for over 10 years. And I tell you, our incumbents are panicking because they don't know how to campaign because they never had to do it. But now we're out there, our policies are out there, our policies we put out there. The first thing that we put out was the physical responsibility. We want to make sure that we're transparent and hold people accountable. And we want to implement a dashboard so that people know, all the Bergen County residents know up-to-date spending on the budget. Because as you know, our budget was just passed, $720 million, increase of another $8 million over last year, and county tax levy increased 5%. We need to know where these monies are being spent, and we will make sure that we will be watching that. And second thing is communication. Accessibility. A lot of complaints as we door knock and canvassing. Majority of the complaints we hear is that they're not accessible. But we will commit to you that we will be available, and we will hear you because your issues matter, and we want to hear from you so we could address it. And thirdly, we want to implement the term limitation. If it's good enough for the president and the governor, it should be good enough for the Bergen County. We cannot have lifetime politicians. Thank you.
Everyone, John Vitale. I'm blessed to be part of this entire crew that is running for Democrats for Change. This is a critical election as well. So you have to think, just common sense will tell you, if we hear about the same repeated issues that we're having, it's difficult to hold accountable people who are trying to make a difference and run for change versus the people who have been in office as we continue to hear the same complaints about things that are not changing. It takes a lot of courage. Everybody who's running up here, it's a lot of courage to go up against the machine, against the establishment. That takes a very special type of person. It takes a lot of courage. And all of my running mates, Dolores and Chris, and along with everybody running for Assembly, we're doing a great job. We're out there, we're being visible, we're being transparent, we're being accountable to the words that we are telling people, what we look to do, what our hopes are, what our aspirations are. And so when you look on the ballot, if you want to see that from Steve Fulop down, those are the Democrats for Change. That's the courage of this run, and we need to change this. We're not heading in the correct direction as a party. We know that right now. So the only way to do that is to fix it and to change it. And that's in your control, and that's where you can help us, and we ask for your vote. Thank you so much.
I'm Dolores Whitko, and I don't know if I could say it better than these two guys did, but I just wanted to say, I saw something on, I guess it was YouTube, that a party official made a comment that we woke up one day and decided that we wanted to run for commissioner. And that couldn't be further from the truth, and that we have no electable experience. I was a councilwoman for 6 years. Chris was, and I was on Board of Education for 10 years. Chris was on Board of Education, and he was the mayor of Powell Park. John did run for assembly last year and got no support from the establishment machine. So even though he doesn't have elected experience in office, he ran a small business, and he has a foundation that feeds people that have food insufficiency. So to me, that's almost as good as having election experience. So when you think about our commitment to serving the residents of Bergen County, I've lived here my entire life, and yes, John's right, it does take courage, and we're doing the best that we can, and we hope that you'll tell your friends and your family to vote for us. Thank you.
And also, they're going to be the benefit, if they win, which we hope they will, the commissioners in the last 3 years gave themselves 23% raises. So if you win, you'll get those raises, or you can give the money back to the people. Give it back. Okay, we're in Paramus right now, and we have an extraordinary candidate running for assembly in Paramus. So I think it's fair to give her the first chance. Damala Robinson, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is, I'm first of all, I'm thankful for all of you being here. Some of you may have received texts, mailers, all kinds of things to try and get you here, and it's really important for our democracy that, we have this level of involvement. So my name is Damali Robinson. I'm running for State Assembly in District 38. I am a resident of Glen Rock. I've grown up in New Jersey. I have been in the military for 16 years, so I'm a major in the U.S. Army. I work at Hackensack University Medical Center. I'm a nurse anesthetist. I've dedicated my life to healthcare. One of my very first jobs, between being a lifeguard and working in EMS in an inner city environment for over 10 years, I've been able to work with people, work alongside people, and lead people in and out of the military, in healthcare, everywhere I go as a change agent that's able to work with people regardless of their party affiliation. And so if there's any kind of legacy that I have for my type of leadership, it's that I'm responsive to the people, I'm accountable to the people, and I work alongside with the people. There's so many things that I could say about, Legislative District 38, and one of the stark contrasts that I had the opportunity to talk about yesterday was about how this district actually went by 0.1% to Trump, which is unique to many of the other election years for our presidential election. So regardless of what people are saying about what is happening, whether it's in Bergen County, in the state of New Jersey, across the country. What I'm focused on is what I'm doing right here. Working on the Board of Education. I've been on the Board of Education for 5 years. I've been the board president in Glen Rock for the past 2 years, and it is a tumultuous time to be in leadership. It's hard to even be in leadership, in a leadership role, as well as running for office. It's very, very challenging. But I think that these are challenging times, and what you all are asking for is for people to continue to do that work and to think differently. And so that's why I'm here. So thank you.
She's a rock star. Now I want to introduce District 37. Dan Park. Dan, another accomplished person. His running mate is not here, but he's here. He can handle it.
Yes, I can. Morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out today on this Saturday morning. My name is Dan Park. I'm a current councilman in Tenafly, New Jersey. I've been a councilman for the last 12 years. What you've heard for the last hour, everything Steve was saying, is true. The disconnect from Trenton to local municipalities, you feel on your next tax bill. One of the most annoying things as a council person is getting handed a state policy that increases your property taxes. I can't do anything about it because I just have to adopt it. This year, Tenafly was introduced a 6% tax increase. I did the math with the budget. This is a state program, this is my program. It's literally 50-50. 3% of my tax increase this year was a state policy. Nothing I could do to change the vote, nothing I can cry about. But if a resident hates their tax increase, they know where to find me at Borough Hall, but they don't know where to find my assembly people. It's that disconnect, everything's